Hello, and welcome back to My Last Vinyl, the show where I like vinyls, I buy vinyls, and this is My Last Vinyl. This is For Emma, Forever Ago by Bon Iver, which I thought was pronounced Bon Iver, but I heard a bunch of videos where people were saying it, so I had to look it up, and the actual person in the band says Bon Iver, so now I'm trying to be all fancy and stuff to say Bon Iver. I got this vinyl for 259 crowns, which is this much. And it was so worth it, because even though it's only one vinyl, it brings such a calming feeling to my collection. This is truly what I would call a vinyl album, because I've thrown that phrase around, I think, in this series as well, but especially with my dad, because when we are shopping for vinyls, I tend to look for vinyl albums. For example, let me look. I'm trying to see an example here. For example, Damn by Kendrick Lamar, which is maybe not an example that I should take if you found me through this album and not what I usually make. But that is not a vinyl album, according to me, because it has such an intense energy. Even though there are some songs which are calmer and such, it doesn't match the same vinyl album feeling as, for example, To Pimp a Butterfly does, which is the same feeling that this gives me. You have your, let me see here, cup of tea, and you spill it on your floor right next to your vinyl and accidentally get it on your vinyl as well. Good job. You put your vinyl on the record player, light a candle, flip the switch on a orange lamp or whatever, and just sit down and take it in. That is not the same thing as I would personally do on Damn, but this captures that feeling. For Emma, Forever Ago was released on the 19th February 2008. But I didn't know about them until much later, when a friend, just about a year, I believe it was 2023, I asked her for a recommendation for something I could listen to. And she recommended this album, and yeah, it was amazing. I know I end every long anecdote with that word, but this is really amazing. It's a perfect album for long bus rides, for example. I took a long bus ride once and listened to this because it really matched the feeling I get from the album cover. I live in a very flat part of Sweden, and there was just this mist lying when I was looking out of the bus window. And having this on with, as you can see, this album cover, it really captured that perfectly and kept me calm during my bus ride. Because it is such a boring bus ride that I've been on for plenty of times. But having this on made it so much more enjoyable. And speaking of the album cover, this is a perfect example of where the album cover really matches the music in the album. And what I mean by that is that some artists have album covers that doesn't match at all. It almost feels like they have taken a random picture even though they maybe haven't. And the energy in the album cover just doesn't match the one in the music. But this one does, and that perfectly ties into the story of this album. And I really like an album that has a great story behind it, even though that isn't perfectly displayed in the music. Just knowing that there's an actual story behind it makes it so much more enjoyable to me. So from what I've gathered from the story, Justin Vernon, more commonly known as Bon Iver, sort of locked himself in this cabin to just think about stuff and make some music. So he had very limited equipment while making this, and I believe that's what makes it so good, honestly. It doesn't have way too much. I believe he had an out-of-tune guitar and everything. I don't remember the story exactly, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the simplicity to his process of making this album is what really engages me. I'm not gonna say that it's easy, but making a very manufactured and polished album is much easier than limiting yourself and just putting out what you are able to create. The track list consists of Flume, Lump Sum, Skinny Love, The Wolves, Act 1 and 2, Blindsided, Creature Fear, Team, For Emma, and Re-Stacks. And my personal favorites are, like many others, Skinny Love, Creature Fear, and For Emma. Even though I believe this is one of those albums that, sure, some of the more poppy, radio-friendly, or whatever you want to call it, songs are able to be in a playlist, but this album should really be played front to back. One thing that I especially like about Creature Fear is its transition between Creature Fear and Team. It's a very simple transition because Creature Fear just builds up into this with a lot of sound. Oh, Creature Fear. When the transition happens isn't clear, but it's very clear that a transition is happening. I like how he's done it, because in some ways I like that you understand that there is a transition happening, but I also like the fact that you very clearly understand that there's a new song. Because even though the skip between song number 1 and song number 2 is seamless, he changes stuff as soon as Team comes on. Team comes in with a little bit of different sounds than Creature Fear had, so you know that, oh, this is something just happened. But if it's your first time listening to the album, you just hear this ramp up in sounds, and then you look at Spotify, if you're listening to it on Spotify, and you're like, wait, wasn't I just listening to Creature Fear? And that's what happened to me, because I was listening through it on Spotify, because sometimes I buy a vinyl before even listening to it, but in most cases I give it a listen on Spotify first before deciding that, okay, this is a vinyl album and I would like to have it. But I had to go back and just double check, wait, wasn't I just listening to Creature Fear? And then I heard the transition and I'm like, I like that. Finally, this is what the album includes. First of all, we'll look at the album. I hope I'm holding up good enough, because I'm using a different camera now and I can't properly see what I'm doing. So we have 2 sides on this magnificent vinyl. Simple black. Very nice. I like this simple kind of label, because sure, a very cool and interesting label is also nice, but having just that simplicity, and it almost looks old-fashioned, this one. There's something to it, and it really matches the whole theme of this album. And then included in the vinyl comes this sheet with lyrics for every song, and just a picture in, I believe, North Carolina. Yeah, I think so. And nothing. And you also get a download link for the music. But that was Bon Iver, For Emma, Forever I Go. I hope that if you haven't listened to it, you'll give it a listen, because it is really worth it. Just save it for the correct day, and I'm sure it's not easy to know when the correct day is for something that you haven't listened to before, but if it's a foggy day now when autumn is basically here, give it a listen if you have the time. But give it a full listen. It is about 40 minutes long, I believe 45, somewhere around that. When you have the time, give it a full listen. Notice the transition between Creature Fear and Team, and just listen to all of it. Give yourself that time and that pleasure. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I did a good job at presenting this vinyl the right way. I hope I didn't offend any hardcore Bon Iver or Twilight fans. And I can promise you, once again, this is not my last vinyl. If you take a look at this note, we have 4 more vinyls right now. So that is just the name of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. And take care, everybody. Please like and subscribe if you want to see what happens next month. I publish a video every 14th, at least I'm trying to, but it's gone good so far. So please subscribe and take care. Goodbye. Så, nej, min mikrofon. min lilla mikrofon.